Guys, do you ever wonder how somebody with essentially no education or marketable skills ends up with a garage full of cars like this? Would you believe me if I told you it was from buying junk like this Corvette ZR1?
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But lucky for me, I can prove it. For the past decade, I've been making a living off salvage cars, and I'm about to show you exactly how I do it. Even by salvage auction standards, this ZR1 is rough, but it was the cheapest in the country at $15,283. I'm gonna strip it completely, see how much money we make, and of course, see how it stacks up on the Salvage Stories high scores list. We might have done it with this one. This is something.
I'm excited that we finally gonna have spare parts, that way we can get the ZR1 completely.
Spare parts.
I'm just trying to be positive here, man, because why do you buy this?
It's a $15,000 ZR1. Why would you not buy it? That is the real question here. How can you not buy a $15,000 ZR1, even if it looks like this? I promise you, hold on. I don't promise. I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I think we're gonna make some good money on this, even though it looks like it's...
I thought that we're trying to stay away from those kind of cars, you know?
Speak for yourself, I'm not. Jokes aside, it does look like the fire was kind of high up. If I had to guess, I'd say it started there from those aftermarket fuel fittings. Just a theory, I'm not an investigator, I don't really know what happened to this. One thing I can tell, however, it's a big hole in the frame. These frames are aluminum and it is quite literally melted away. Not only that, but our nice chrome ZR1 wheel is properly heat treated. It's actually warped. That's wild. It's wrinkled and it is just the coating, but that is tough. Moving back up the frame, there's another massive hole here where the door goes. Looking at this section, in comparison at least, that car looks like a light burn. And yes, I know you guys are gonna give it to me in the comments for calling something that looks like this a light burn, but it was. In fact, the roof was still attached to that car, albeit barely. The roof of this car, I do have to admit, that's pretty impressive. There's a hard resin that goes over top of this. Obviously that melted away. Here's the actual structural carbon fiber, and that piece right there is just the aesthetic layer that goes over top.
Pretty sure this is the clear part of the hood.
You'd be right on that. That is the clear part. It used to be clear at least. That is, wow. Check out the backside of that. That's insane.
No.
If nothing else, you know what we're getting out of this car? A ton of wall art. While we're on the topic of wall art here, what about the actual hood? That, again, is really impressive to me. It's half intact, half burnt down the center, and there's a bunch of exposed carbon. Wow. Wow, there's the carbon halo. Again, impressive. I have a feeling that I'm going to be saying that a lot about this car. We'll see more of this when we put it up in the air, but I believe this is the B&B Billy Boat PRT exhaust. This is the same one I had on my Inferno orange car back in the day, and it is awesome. One of the first mods I spotted was this guy right here. This is a DSX auxiliary fuel pump kit. I have the same one on my car. Needless to say, I don't think we're going to be able to fetch any money for this. It's seen better days. You guys already got to look at the carbon fiber intake there. That actually may be usable in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. We'll have to look a little more into it. One other thing I saw, it does have an aftermarket upper pulley on it. Ooh, not only that, but if you look down there, it is a little hard to see, but it does have an aftermarket lower on it as well. And of course, pretty much the first mod that any Corvette owner does, aftermarket headers. They're wrapped, so I have no clue what brand they are, but we'll find that out once we get them out of the car and unwrap them.
I don't want to imagine how crazy people's gonna get having an LS9 for sale. Even if it's just the block.
I'm hoping the block's good though, I really am. What it's all gonna come down to is if water got into it at any point. The heat's high enough that I don't think the block's gonna be affected by the heat, but if water got down in there, well, we all know how that goes. Now let's say this engine was good, complete. It wasn't damaged by fire. It's easily a $20,000, if not a $25,000 engine these days. Obviously this one, it's gonna be worth a good bit less. So we're gonna have to search a little harder to get our money out of it. But there are a few things that stick out to me. An obvious one, ZR1 fenders. I don't think they're made anymore. This one does have a little heat damage. A little heat damage. If it was good, $2,500, $3,000 even. This one, even with the damage, I'd be surprised if it's not $2,000. Carbon ceramic brakes. These guys over here don't appear to be affected by the heat at all. They're not discolored. They look great, honestly. As a full set, that's about $6,000. So each corner, $1,500 bucks. If we do some hack math here, $1,500, $3 grand. Slightly questionable, very questionable. We'll have to see how these look once we get the wheels off. If there's one that's going to be good, it's obviously this one. It looks like it just has some smoke damage, but we won't know till later down the road. The only other obvious money in it, if it's not damaged by the fire, trans and diff. The ZR1 setup, also massive money. And by massive, I mean like $7,500. The Z06, about $4,500. A base manual, say $3 grand. So at the very least, we do have a bunch of money in this car. Is it gonna cover 15 grand? Well, it's only one way to find out.
Hey, don't tell me this is trash.
Trash.
Because you're just wasting money right now.
Trash. This is wall art. Look at this pile of awesome stuff. We already talked about the hood. The front bumper's pretty cool. We have a half of a carbon lip on there. The rear bumper. One thing I noticed while I was taking it apart.
Ooh, that's awesome. We can actually put this for sale. Neochrome ZR1 wheels. I know what I got.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's gonna buy this. It needs a little work. Just a little bit.
Minor scratches.
The brake caliper, I mean, maybe it's usable. I don't feel comfortable selling it. With how much heat this rotor took, I don't feel comfortable selling that either. So I think I'm gonna do something cool with that whole assembly. The first look, I haven't even got so much as a glimpse under here. I'm not super worried about it. I'm a little worried, but I think it's gonna be fine. The exhaust, that's the most heat wrap I've ever seen. That's excessive.
Do you need that much on a ZR1?
You don't need that on a space shuttle, all right? Starting with the good news already, though. The trans, the diff, at least it's pretty much silver. It's not completely burnt to a crisp. I think the top's going to look about the same. I mentioned earlier that I think this is the same exhaust I had on my Inferno ZR1. I'm hoping we can get a brand name somewhere. There we are. Forgot where the badge is. That is indeed the PRT. The best I can tell right now, this exhaust did get some dirt, some nasty stuff up in the tips, but otherwise it doesn't look too bad at all. Everything else under here looks pretty standard, except the giant hole in the floor, but I guess that's to be expected when you consider what the top of the car looks like. Coming back to the front of the car, the plastic shroud did get melted over the heat exchanger pretty good, but the heat exchanger itself actually looks like it might be usable.
Is this aftermarket?
It is not. That's actually stock ZR1 stuff, believe it or not. It's a really cool welded aluminum piece that you wouldn't expect to see on a factory car, but it is indeed factory. We obviously have ourselves a massive amount of work here. The financials on this are pretty much going to come down to the health of the engine. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but for now, we got to sort through all this stuff, get rid of the stuff we don't need from it, find somewhere to store all the wall art, and then see if we can pull any money out of this pile of parts. Yep, this is it. About $100. We obviously have some work to do. I know it might not look like we've got a lot done yet, but trust me, we have. On a car that has this much money in it and this few good parts, we really need to take our time and get every single bit of value, including these guys right here. You just watched me pry a bunch of burnt plastic off this heat exchanger. This is something that you might have imagined would have went in the scrap dumpster, and this little guy right here. This is important for a different reason. Honestly, these two parts right here are a microcosm of why I love the salvage industry. We'll go ahead and start with the heat exchanger pump. This guy right here used to not be that expensive. When they were available from GM, I think they were $200, $300, $400 brand new, so there wasn't a huge market for it. The thing is, they got discontinued some point during COVID, and now they're worth a ton of money. There's definitely better aftermarket options for that kind of money, but when somebody wants to replace a part on a $100,000 ZR1, sometimes they want OEM, and in this case, you kind of have to pay up for a used one. If we were doing this part out a year ago, best case scenario, we're looking at like $250. Obviously, things have changed, so as long as this powers up. Yeah, all that stuff I just said about that massive payday we're sitting on. Didn't work out for us this time, but hey, that's why we test them here instead of sending them out and letting somebody find out the hard way. But as for this not so beautiful, I almost called it beautiful, heat exchanger here, This isn't extremely valuable, let's be real. Nobody's buying this to put it back in their ZR1 considering the condition it's in, but that does not mean there's not a small market for this. If somebody's doing a budget supercharger project, don't say a real piece of trash car like, they're just looking for something cheap to get the job done, maybe this is the perfect fit. Now, as much as I love this logic, as much as I love pulling money out of weird places on cars, this car's still very clearly gonna come down to the engine. And fortunately for us, we don't have that much more work to do before we get to find out how f***ed we are. It's been ugly, it's definitely been dirty, but we have pretty much all the parts we need to get off so we can drop this engine down. Except, well, one, and you're gonna laugh, because we have to light it on fire again. All right, technically we're not lighting the car on fire, but that was way more fun to say, let's be honest. The fact is, these wide body fender tubs are worth a ton of money. We got super lucky that even though a lot of the plastic inside of the fender tub melted, the fender tub itself appears to be structurally sound. So before this crispy, extra well done ZR1 can finally rest in peace at the salvage yard, we had to hit it with the heat just one more time. You know, I almost feel bad putting this car through the ringer again with another fire, but hey, $650. With that, the fun's over and the games begin. Or maybe it's the other way around. I honestly don't know at this point. I've inhaled way too much of that smoke and things are kind of fuzzy. But before we drop this engine and transmission down, we have to drain the fluids. And of course, if you remember the demon build, oh no, no. 3, 2, 1. Oh my, no. Even though this LS9 engine looks like this and the inside of the throttle body looks like that, I don't think that water coming out of this is going to be the worst thing in the world. Let's confirm the theory first, and then I'll explain why. This never gets any easier, I swear. Oh my God. Okay, so we're off to a good start. Let's see what comes out after it. In case you're unfamiliar with the dry sump setup here, this is the same pan, it just has 2 drain plugs, so theoretically. I was in the middle of saying something. Nice. So it's not all bad. Yes, a little water came out. Yes, I didn't expect it after pulling that front drain plug and having it be perfectly fine. But you see that one sits just a little higher than this one here. So it looks like any water in the pan was limited to about right there. If there's a silver lining here, it's that there wasn't that much water in there. And of course, I say that as if it's the best outcome you could expect draining your car's oil. Now, before I give you my conspiracy theory, which will surely be proven wrong later in the video when we pull the heads and the cylinder walls are rusted to shit, let's go ahead and drain our trans and diff. We're Gucci. Now get out those tinfoil hats. I'm thinking that water got in through here. This is the dry sump tank. It has a plastic top. It obviously melted through right there. My finger is in the hole right now as we speak. Let's say I'm theoretically right about that. Water would have came all the way down here, went to the lines that are now disconnected, then went right over there to the engine. That means that water could have got down there in the oil pan, bypassing the engine completely. That means the cylinder walls would be good. That means it didn't have to travel down through the heads. Maybe it's a long shot. Maybe there's another hole over here that I'm not seeing right now. I'm not gonna dig through this at the moment. We'll wait till we get it out. But for now, that's the story I'm gonna stick to. So that game we normally play about what did we forget, the answer on this car is probably everything. Look at the frame right there. I'm not positive that the car's not going to tank backwards off the lift, so I think I'm going to put a strap on it.
Why? Because you don't want to scratch the paint?
What do you think?
She ain't going nowhere.
What is hung up? Is it the
It's
strut?
The right.
They melted together. Oh, it was a wire or something? Wow. This is all very impressive. I don't really like the look of that. We're gonna have to figure this out because I don't want that differential slamming down on the subframe and God forbid breaking it, because that's like the only bit of money we have in this damn car.
Things is getting serious now.
Well, it's like medium serious, like 25% serious, or else I put it on the respirator, but you know. Dude, I don't even feel the shifter. I literally do not. So that's the console lid. Name this part.
HUD?
Yes, sir. Heads up display. It usually doesn't look like that, though. There's your gauge cluster. Oh, there's the knob right there. I can't feel the shaft, but I can feel the knob. Oh my God, it actually still shifts. If this isn't a testament to MGW quality, I don't know what is. Oh my God. This wiring's so crispy, it's almost hard to cut. You know when you like overdo a steak? Hold on. We got one line.
Gotta do the honors?
Do the honors. Look at this pile of trash. You know, it's times like these when you step back and you're not actively working on the car, and you think to yourself, why did I buy this? Why? What would possess a person to buy this other than just pure stupidity or boredom? But here's that MGW. It's really hard to shift without a rod in my hand, but it does shift through the gear. One thing I noticed right off the jump here, this is an aftermarket remote clutch bleeder. And I'm not gonna say that this is what caused the fire, but it is kind of a notorious issue with these cars that clutch lines can burn through because of their proximity to the header there and light these cars on fire. I should probably go check my clutch line right now. Now that this thing's out, we kind of have the full picture of what's going on with it. Aftermarket clutch, MGW, trans and diff are okay like I thought they would be. They're just gonna need a heavy cleaning. But aside from cleaning, my biggest question about this car is, do it have a cam?
I will say no.
Come on, have some faith, man. Believe in something.
I will say no.
It's gotta have a cam. What do you think it sounds like if it is cammed?
I know how they sound. Just roll the clip.
Nah,
I can't do it right now.
About. No. Just go for it. They probably saw your first video. We're like, I need that in my life right now. We can speculate all day. We need to get all that off. We need to get this on an engine stand, and we need to tear this thing down. I should have been an engineer. What do you think the breaking strength of that wire is?
Wow. That's pretty good.
That's impressive.
Yeah. This actually looks pretty cool. Look.
What is that? I don't know what plastic that is, but
Balco? Like
it shouldn't be like that. Oh.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of that look, for sure.
Wow. Wait.
It's no time for games, Fernando.
Oh. There you go. Yep.
Cool. It's obviously not a secret that we get rid of a ton of cars here at the shop, but for some reason, every time I see a ZR1 go, though it is rare, it's always kind of a sad day. Of course, with this ZR1, along with the rest of the cars we part out, there's always one giant silver lining about sending them to their grave. And of course, I'm talking about all these fine parts. I do have to take a second compliment these guys though. They went through a literal fire, not heat from headers, a fire. And these plug wire insulators by Vengeance Racing held up great. I am pretty excited to see what kind of clutch is in this. And it is what I suspected, a monster. Usually the telltale sign is a green remote bleeder for the clutch. Obviously in this car we didn't have that luxury. I think this might be the only time you ever hear me say this, but it's honestly kind of a shame that this clutch is in fantastic shape. It's a monster twin disc, the clutch discs, flawless, the floater, amazing, the flywheel, the pressure plate, fresh machine marks all around. This is something that would pull a decent bit of money if it didn't look like that. So for such a nice, obviously low mile clutch, the fire affected it greatly, the pressure plate's all rusted up. It's definitely still usable, but there's a 0% chance somebody's gonna pay good money for this when they can just buy a new one from Monster that doesn't look like this. Unfortunately, when parts heat up and rust like that, there's not much we can do to fix that. But some of this other stuff here, the torque tube, the exhaust, the trans and diff over there, I think we can clean those up pretty well.
I think that we can do that, but at the same time, I got a question for you.
Let's hear it.
Do you think that all these parts is worth the 15K?
Oh, we'll have more than 15K here.
This is basically all that you get from that car, right?
Yeah, I know it's not that impressive, is it? Well, hold on. You have some more parts you've already taken up there.
It's just 2 fenders.
What do you got to say now? We got some more parts, right?
They worth like 50 bucks.
One thing I am kind of surprised about, there's rubber couplers in here. They're notorious for breaking at the drag strip. I'm shocked that the heat didn't mess them up, but this is a solid, really nice condition torque tube. The shaft isn't bent, there's no play. Did not expect that, but it's an easy $1,000 for us. We do have to split this trans and diff. They're gonna be better off sold separately. We have to pull all these burn sensors out of there because there's no need to ship those out with it. We're gonna let this dry off, and in the meantime, it's time to tackle one of the worst tasks known to man.
I think they're going lunch.
I bet you are. It's 8:55 in the morning.
Oh, you're right at lunchtime, you know?
Yes, I know it's late June. It's gonna be like 90 degrees out today. But if you've messed with this stupid wrap before, you know exactly how nasty it is. I'm positive this is what archaeologists felt like in ancient Egypt. I'm fairly certain I don't have to tell you guys verbally that that was no fun whatsoever, so I'm not gonna, but it was indeed worth it. I suspected this was the case based on the design of the headers and the X-pipe, but we have ourselves a set of beautiful American racing headers. No cheap junk, no knockoffs, nothing made out of Burmese soda cans, and that's exactly why we're always so strict about pulling this header wrap, to make sure we know what we're selling, make sure we're getting every bit of value out of it, and of course make sure there's no damage. But now that we've answered all of our questions, we've cleaned all of our parts, they're all up there with Fernando currently getting photoed, it's time to get some answers. The part that I've been most looking forward to, but also at the same time not looking forward to at all, let's tear down this engine. We're off to a rocket start. The engine cover got so hot, it has the fuel rail ingrained in it. That was satisfying. As you might imagine, this throttle body has been stuck shut. If you can see the outside of it, it's not in the best shape. So this is gonna be my first look inside this blower. I'm genuinely curious if it's ported. Not that it would have made a huge difference in value either way, but it's not ported. It would have been cool to see, but I suppose it doesn't really matter. This car still has a weird set of mods on it. Usually with these, people either go all out or don't do much at all. To have the auxiliary fuel pump, to have pulley upper and lower, and not have a ported blower. It has some injectors here, but they're not the name brand that we'd expect. Injector Dynamics. Definitely one of the more oddly modified ZR1s I've came across. We're stripped down pretty naked. It may look like we just got a bunch of burnt junk off, that it all went into that trash bin right there, but truthfully that's not the case. We actually have ourselves a good bit of money over here. You might think it's things like the power steering pump or the alternator, even the AC compressor. Unfortunately, this is pretty rough. The power steering pump actually may be okay, even though it was on the side that took the most heat, but the real value here are in things like this. In the Corvette world, this part is pretty much unobtainable. GM discontinued it some years ago, and it's a really complex power steering bracket. It has an integrated spline shaft there to a pulley that's part of the bracket instead of the pump. It's a really weird setup, but it's pretty much the only way you can run an LS9 accessory drive. The LSA out of the ZL1 and the CTS-V, they're an 8-rib system. These from the factory are 11 ribs. I can't recall another time in this company's history where we've got one of these. Every time we've got an LS9, it's been out of a complete car. We've sold it as a whole engine, all the accessories, the supercharger, the wiring harness, everything. So I think we're going to be able to pull over $1,000 for this. Well, that setup's far and away the most expensive piece here. There are some other LS9 specific pieces. It's pretty obvious. The engine mount brackets, they're worth a few bucks. The alternator bracket, that's worth good money. Though because it's less complex, it's not worth nearly as much as the power steering. Another ZR1 specific part, the belt tensioner. Unfortunately, this one saw a little bit of heat, and they're not that valuable. Even nice ones are about 150 bucks. There's so many aftermarket options as far as these go. So as far as this one, I'm not gonna lie, pulling this apart so far, at least 75% better than I expected. And unlike the Demon, all the bolts weren't loose. It looks like an LS9 blower. Nothing weird going on here. Smells like a supercharger. The rotors, a little bit of wear, nothing crazy. This looks totally normal.
How many miles can you get?
I mean, the cluster, we couldn't get it to power up for some reason, so I don't know the mileage on this car. I'll Carfax it. Carfax, if you would like to sponsor us, I will say your actual name. There might be a bunch of dirt around, but the ports don't show any sign of having water in them. If water got into this engine, I'm gonna guess it's through right there. We can't ignore the fact that this supercharger is in phenomenal shape. There would usually be a bunch of play in here. You'd hear this clicking back and forth. It had to have been rebuilt somewhat recently, probably when they did this pulley. That, coupled with the fact that these bolts weren't loose, everything was nice and tight and uniform, I'm inclined to believe that even though this thing saw heat, even though it's missing some things like the bypass valve that got melted off, we really lucked out and got ourselves a good blower. Now, I do have a feeling that this is where things might get sketchy. Okay. If water did get in there, I'd expect to see some rust on a valve spring. It really looks like there's just burnt plastic. And we do have ourselves dual valve springs. Not only do we have dual valve springs, but we also have a trunnion upgrade. You see it has that C-clip on there. Usually these are kind of a half moon shape. Somebody at the very least went above the bare minimum. Ooh. Vengeance Racing 7.4 length push rod, which is the most common one when you do an aftermarket cam, Fernando. I'm telling you, it's cammed.
Look at those bolts. It doesn't look aftermarket.
They aren't. So by that theory, that means they wouldn't have pulled the heads. I think that theory is going to hold up because the heads aren't ported.
But at that point, you go to the old headache to do the cam and everything, don't do the heads.
Hey, I agree. But there is a line there where putting a cam in these cars isn't that expensive until you get into doing heads as well. It's either going to be rusty cylinder walls or we're making some money. I can't see yet. Ooh, just dirt. Look at that.
Wow.
Clean. I think we just lucked out big time. Spins over really well. All the cylinder walls look good. Factory, they have some wear on them, but good. This is as good as you could ever expect from an engine that looked like, well, this. Hell yeah. Tell me that's not one of the most satisfying sounds out there.
That oil looks weird.
Because there was water in this, remember? This is going to demonstrate exactly how high this water got. Now stick with me. That drain facing forward right there is the drain that no water came out of. I was super confident, but the oil that comes out of there has to get picked up right here, go all the way around through the oil pump and get drained out this side. The side drain right there is what water did come out of, albeit not much. You can see exactly how high it was. There's actually a distinct sludge line there, which is kind of crazy. It's fairly disgusting, but it's good to have because we know it didn't get up into the engine, and we also know it didn't touch that baffle. The baffle, the crank, everything that matters is super clean. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And if you can't tell by all these markings on here, these engines from the factory, from GM, are hand assembled. I like it. I like it a lot. This could not have worked out better. There's simply no other way to put it. We're about at the end of the road here. The only question we have left is, do it have a cam? I want to see what this car would have sounded like back in its heyday, like 2 months ago when it wasn't burnt to a crisp. You ever pulled a cam before?
No, I never. I need to learn.
Today's the day. Breaking that seal is the hardest part.
Oh, that's why you let me do it?
Now, twist it a little. There you go. Let this be a cam uninstall lesson for everybody watching as well. You want to be very gentle with this and spin it around so you don't pull the cam bearings out, which are those right there. Yeah, perfect.
All right.
There you go. Vengeance Racing ZR1-E. You think we can find a sound clip online?
Probably.
In the grand scheme of things, this aftermarket cam's not going to pull a ton of money, barely any at all, maybe $250, $300. This pulley is actually worth a good bit more money. Truthfully, I really just wanted to pull this out to see what it was. As for the short block, we've seen everything we need to see, though I wouldn't necessarily want to just throw it in a car without testing it first, without going through it. It does appear to be a really nice condition block. Now that the hard work is done, we've got absolutely every single part we could possibly get out of that burned up ZR1. There is just one more thing Fernando wants to brag about. You made that thing look brand new. Brand new.
Hey, people say that I don't do nothing in the shop, so.
Well, your hands aren't in your pockets anymore, are they? I'm not gonna lie, I did not expect this. This thing cleaned up really nice. I suppose it was covered from the actual fire, but still, thing was nasty when we started. But hey, now this thing looks brand new. Anyway, now we get the pleasure of listing all these parts and seeing how much money we made. After everything we've seen, I'm convinced we're gonna make a few bucks, which is pretty much all you can ask for an absolute trash pile of a car like that. Alrighty, the numbers are in. We're gonna rock through this kind of quick because I'm really excited to go put it on the board. You'll understand why in a second. First off, the car, we bid $14,200 on it. Obviously, it looks like a piece of trash in here. It showed up looking like a piece of trash and story lines up, right?
To buy a ZR1 at all though, especially for that price, as bad as it was looking, they are not easy to buy at auction nowadays.
Not at all. They pretty much never come up, so hey, it's gotta be the cheapest one that sold, period, in some time. Of course, Copart got their cut, so $14,200 was the bid. All in, we had $15,283. Of course, we did have to ship it from Georgia. Atlanta's one of the most popular routes, so it didn't cost us too much money. $400, not bad. Now, for the other side of the token here, we produced a grand total of 61 parts for $31,683. On a car that's burnt like that, 61 parts is actually kind of impressive.
That's a solid number, given that that's half as many parts as you've been seeing on these salvage stories for a car that looked like it was a quarter of the car.
I mean, there are some cars we get in here that are complete cars that don't produce that many parts. Camaros, some Challengers, Mustangs. Now, a couple parts of note, unless you're in the ZR1 community or you've parted these out or you've had to buy them, which Probably isn't the best scenario to be trying to buy these things. It's not a friendly market for you guys. Some of this stuff's gonna blow your mind with how expensive it is. The differential, 3,800 bucks, you cannot find them. The cylinder heads, even though they came off a fire car, you can only get so many of these. They didn't make that many of them. Not positive you can get them new anymore. Either way, as cores, they sell pretty much immediately. Some machine shop's gonna buy these things, port them and sell them for $3,000. That burnt up B&B PRT muffler. Fernando worked his magic on it, made it look really nice, and we listed it for 1,200 bucks. It's gonna sell quick. You remember what that thing sounds like.
I do.
Had it on my orange car, amazing.
It's a great sounding exhaust. The fact that it cleaned up good is just an extra bonus.
One very special piece on the ZR1 with an interesting note that some of you guys may not know. These aren't measured in thickness like normal rotors, they're measured in weight. Right there on the hat of the rotor, it lists the minimum weight, 5840 grams, and we came in 40 grams overweight, so good rotor, I suppose that's how it works. Now that's enough about parts. We gotta get into the rest of the expenses, because again, I really want to go put this on the board and I guess do some bragging here. Part shipping, $1,750. 61 parts was a lot for this car. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. There are a few bigger items like that short block, the trans, the diff even to an extent.
The other nice thing with a Corvette like this, even though it's a ZR1 and the components are special, like the fender, it's not different dimensionally than all these other Corvettes that we do. No,
it's like an inch wider. It's a wide body.
It fits in the same box is the point that I'm making here, where we don't have to go building crates like on the Audi R8 GT salvage story that you guys just saw.
Next up, labor. $750. It wasn't the most fun car to do. It did take a little bit because we had to tear down the engine. It was a burnt piece of trash, but at the same time, we didn't have to touch the interior. It was really kind of light. 61 parts, light on the shipping side, light on the photo side. Next up, as always, selling fees. $38.68. It's 10% every time we do one of these things. And I'm sure some of you guys are running through the math in your head right now. I did say there was 31,000 some dollars in parts, yet the selling fees are 3,800 something. That's because we've sold a few things, and a few things brought a lot of money. $6,400 to be exact. We sold the power steering assembly, which I did call was gonna go quick because you can't find them. We sold the blower, the American Racing headers, and a fender. Last up on the list of expenses, dead inventory, 2,500 bucks. There's not a lot that's gonna sit on here. Typically when we do C6 Corvettes, we move through the stuff pretty fast. Obviously on this car there are some condition issues, so I jacked up the price a little bit.
Theoretical net margin, $13,532.
Which puts it, this is gonna be sweet. Corvette, assuming its rightful place atop the dumb Mustang. This is the only bad part about going number one. You got to do all the manual labor here. The S2000 get moved down there. Oh, we do still have one import.
Something against the imports there, Carrington?
I mean, I do like my cars with more than 200 horsepower generally. Numero uno. So back-to-back salvage stories going number one. It's been a pretty good month on the financial side.
I think that this is a very eclectic board that you have here, though, is you have one car from each of the big three in the top three of the salvage stories. I don't think you're really going to see any of these over in the big baller division at any point, unless we buy, I guess, a really good condition ZR1 to part out.
Well, we just bought a red eye that's close. It's not going to quite make it. The red eye could definitely get there.
That's actually a good point. I didn't even think about that car, and it's kind of right on the borderline.
Or Demon.
Really what I'm taking away from this is that Carrington doesn't like seeing the imports on the high scoreboard, and that kind of gives me motivation. I'm going to find an import that's going to fit somewhere. I think I'm going to, lodge it somewhere in this section right here, shake up that top three.
Can we put one stipulation?
Let's hear it.
It's got to have 400 horsepower or more.
Okay.
I'll deal with a modified import. If it makes 400 horsepower, if it could beat a stock Camaro, I'll let it on the board. Import versus domestic aside, to have a new number one, to make 13,000 some dollars on a burnt up car like that, how can you ask for any more? At this point, I think I kind of just want to go looking for another burn car. If it can't be a ZR1, put it in the comments, let me know what I should look for. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, the next car that you're gonna see me do here is another Chevy, and it's got an awesome engine. By awesome, I mean big cubes, cammed, and it was a surprise. I am super excited to show you guys, so I'm not gonna keep you waiting long.
God, I fucking told you. I told you you're gonna hit it. You see it?
I thought I was on the bolt. I was trying to no look, just. I was not on the bolt. I was right about there.
Ooh.
Vengeance Racing 7